What's up, investors? It's the Russian dude. Here's the deal. Some people think that Russia's power structure is bulletproof and the regime is immovable simply because Vladimir Putin has been in charge longer than some dictators could ever dream of. That, well, is this possible? How could he do it? But the real story happening beneath the surface is not about some brand new dictatorship techniques or sudden human psychology discoveries. It is simply about the system which day and night tries to figure out how to fuel the state machine when its charismatic engine finally shuts down. By October 2025, Putin celebrates 73rd birthday, an age when even the most devoted computer geniuses can no longer Photoshop out his wrinkles. And once that man in his 70s fades away from the spotlight, whether by design, accident or old-fashioned mortality, definitely not by his choice, or at least not his own, the whole image his inner circle has built around him will be shattered within weeks, maximum months. The history has shown us already multiple times that this is the ultimate fate every single dictator is facing. Not a single one of them ended a revered man, like most of the population thought he was when he was still alive. Some people finally opened their eyes, while others finally realized that they knew he was a bad man all along, they just needed an excuse. And we do not think that Putin will be able to cheat the history and achieve a different result this time. Look around. Every grand celebration on Red Square, every inflated rally, every state TV propagandistic TV show praises Putin's wisdom as it all leans on one single idea. There is no Russia without Vladimir Putin. The man's face is everywhere: city buses, banners, TV, newspapers, internet, and even on branded vodka bottles. Remove him and what's left? A hollow shell of a regime that obliterated independent media, annihilated the judiciary, and turned civil society into a managed puppet show. By the way, speaking about the puppet show, there was an actual such show in the early 2000s, which ridiculed Russian politicians and famous people, including Putin himself.
Вы, батенька, ну что ж, располагайтесь, чайку.
Спасибо. Хорошо тут у вас, просторно.
Да, жилплощадь вполне приличная.
Вас ведь хотели отсюда того? Вынести?
Да ну прекратить, пустые.
If your first question is, how is it even possible in Putin's Russia? Well, that is a very legitimate question, I gotta tell you that. Because it's not possible, that's the answer. That's why one of the first Putin's ridiculous laws was to ban this specific TV show, so beloved by Russian people since 1994. Then it was the real institutions, such as courts, elections, honest police, all have been starved of power so systematically that the only thing growing consistently is the all-consuming cult of personality. There is no parliament to negotiate with, no other political party to rally behind, just one man's ego fortified by an apparatus of siloviki, literally translated as security men or men of power, who swear loyalty only to their supreme master. But when Putin finally falls from his throne, those same siloviki will look at each other and wonder, so who do I swipe my loyalty card for now? It's like building a skyscraper around a single bearing column, and when you remove it, the whole thing just obviously comes crashing down. In monarchies, dynastic succession is written in dusty tomes and coronation rituals. In democracies, on the other hand, it is spelled out in constitutions and ballots. Russia? Well, succession here has become a lawless sport, played off the record by whisper networks in the FSB hallways. The older you get, the more you realize that a personalist autocracy thrives on fear. Fear of dissent, fear of conspiracies, and fear that the next in line will throw you into Siberian gulag for being a little bit too ambitious. So of course, nobody wants to craft a clear succession plan, because a plan is a roadmap to challenge. Better just to keep the car in neutral, keep each potential driver hungry, and let them fight amongst themselves over who gets to drive next. Remember the Medvedev presidency fiasco? That was just the opening act. Behind the scenes, every faction within the elite has pitched its own successor blueprint, Let's elevate Shoigu to marshal status, some people said, and then slip him in as president. No, Patrushev is the real power deal. He got the FSB oath keepers behind him. But what about that no-name regional governor who is quietly building a private army in the Urals? Other people said. Well, at least nobody proposed Kadyrov, I think. The problem is, each option comes with a poison pill. Give Shoigu the keys, and the military brass stops listening to the FSB. Install Patrushev, and you spark a silent coup in the Interior Ministry. Elevate an under-the-radar governor, and the oligarchs who manage the cash registers of Russia, well, they suddenly start revolting en masse. Why his puppet and not mine, they will ask. Right before absolutely devouring each other for the right to put their own guy in the presidency chair. So as a result of all this, instead of picking a successor, they have settled on an informal freeze. Just a little formality. Because according to the Russian constitution, at least at those times, the president could not rule for more than 2 terms consecutively. Just a minor word scramble which opened the world of possibilities for Putin. Put Medvedev as a president, tell him what to do behind the scenes, refresh your double presidency term, and think what you can do to then rule forever. That's precisely what happened behind the scenes in the first decade of 21st century inside Russia. Meanwhile, rumor wheels spin non-stop. One whisper claims that Putin is training a council of elders to hold power collectively once he is gone, like a Politburo 2.0, but secret one. Another says there is a draft decree stored somewhere on a hard drive in the Kremlin bunker, ready to install some obedient minister as acting head until the oligarchs sort out who gets the juiciest oil fields. Or maybe Putin simply doesn't care. I mean, why should he if everything that's about to happen will happen when he is no longer here to witness the consequences? So why waste his brain power and whatever little time he might have left thinking about things that will not matter to him? Better spend the time and figure out how to rule unchallenged while you still can. Well, yet every blueprint falls apart the second it seems daylight, and the question is why? Because the only legitimate authority in Russia today is whoever wears Putin's shoes. Nobody else has enough power to enforce a transition, and nobody trusts each other to hand over the scepter of the Tsars. Since February 22, property seizures have exploded like never before. Port terminals, candy and pasta factories, private airports, anything too big to ignore gets slapped with a court order and handed to someone with the right telephone number. It's not just a revenge against inconvenient business owners, it is a naked power grab, simple as that. Each oligarch hustles to collect assets under the guise of nationalization, not because they care about state budget or because they know better how to manage things, but because every new factory or pipeline is a shield against tomorrow's chaos and uncertainty. Why let someone else control those juicy cash flows when you might wake up one day to a completely different boss reality? And then what? Where will you get money from to buy a new set of loyalties or to lay low somewhere on the private beach in France? So that's why they are vacuuming up property like frat boys raiding a pizza buffet at 3 AM after their football team wins a college title. Take Abramovich, for example. He once danced at Chelsea Football Club's stadium, but after 2022, he saw the writing on the wall loud and clear, and then he started merging his holdings to shell companies in friendly jurisdictions. Meanwhile, the Rothenberg brothers, once Putin's former judo partners, took advantage of every seized assets to thicken their portfolio of steel mills and port concessions. It's not philanthropy, not by all means. It's a private fortress being built, brick by stolen brick, in anticipation of the biggest of all asset raids once Putin closes his eyes forever. When the boss finally clocks off his final shift, the oligarchs want to be prepared, stacked with billion-dollar assets, just in case. Plus, well, that's the only thing they know how to do anyways. But this frenzy has a very dark side. As second-tier oligarchs get devoured, the pool of acceptable elites shrink. The regime's favorite sharks hoard more and more, but in doing so, they tip the balance of power so far it becomes completely unstable. Concentrate too much wealth in too few hands, and you breed envy, resentment, and backstabbing. And suddenly, every mentioned sale, every offshore account is an entry ticket to a death match. And that's exactly the brew that will fuel the post-Putin power wrestling. Only this time, the losers will be stripped not just of their assets, but of their freedom, their safety, most likely even of their lives. So, where does all this leave the rest of us, the regular people, the ordinary folk, who do not own oil fields or top-level security clearance ID cards? I don't know, some of you guys might. You would think the brutal logic of self-preservation would force the elites into creating together some sort of transitional agreement or arrangement, an advisory council or agency or just a borrowing of the Chinese playbook. Allegedly, they have some similar experience, people say. Instead, Putin's inner circle planted their heads firmly into the sand, pretending eternal rule is still on the menu somehow. And meanwhile, everyday life inches closer towards a grim horizon. Pensions delayed for months, food prices skyrocket, youth flee in mass to Europe on some questionable shady visas. The state cracks down even harder, because with no succession plan, any public dissent could spark the fire of revolt they're so desperately trying to conceal. In the coming years, we will see a few possible scenarios. First, eclectic group of siloviki, top generals and the FSB bosses, announce a caretaker government and then juggle the presidency like hot potato, rotating every 6 months. Well, fantastic in theory, but in practice it's a recipe for open internal confrontation and mini coups. Second, a single hardliner, a regional strongman or warlord makes the play, backed by a faction of elites, and crushes all rivals in a whirlwind of Kremlin purge. This would seal Russia's fate to one man even more dangerously than before. The country simply cannot afford 2-3 more decades of similar nonsense. Third, the system collapses into factionalism so deep that regional governors break away, declaring autonomy or even independence. I mean, imagine Siberian separatism or the Volga republics going rogue, or most probable, Chechnya finally declaring long-awaited independence. A fragmentation nightmare that not a single CIA analyst could forecast accurately. So, by the way, let me know down below in the comments, guys, if any of these outcomes sound reasonable to you, or whether you think something else might happen. It will be definitely very curious to read all your comments. But ultimately, what do we know is that none of these paths lead to stability. They all promise bloodshed, fresh purges, and an economic implosion that makes today's shortages look like a child play. And for the common Russian, the odds of catching a break under any of these outcomes are like almost slim to nothing. Yet hope still flickers in the darkness. Underground networks sharing uncensored news, dissenting techies hacking state propaganda, small communities coming together to preserve culture, language, or even local governance rituals. If the old guard cannot dream up a peaceful handoff, the future may be hijacked by those who never asked for permission to govern in the first place. Well, there you have it, guys. If you have not done so already, please subscribe to my channel for more videos like this. If you wish to support my work, there is a link down below. Thanks so much for watching. See you tomorrow.
We won't succumb to their tricks, the facade they try to sell. Their twisted words and feeble claims are all they cannot quell. We see through their lies, their feeble attempts to sway. We do not believe